Hi, my name is Starr. I'm the owner of Only Raw Hair, and today I'm telling my story. So, where do I begin? Well, let's begin in 2017 when I decided to get my black ass married. Okay. In 2017, when I decided to accept my ex husband's proposal, I was actually an event designer for Deja Vu Entertainment, which owned Club NB at the time. I had two children, Heaven and Orion, and I was kind of just living my single life. I really wasn't dating much at all. I never been a real big dater anyway, so I was always a loner. But always going to the parties, always hanging out with celebrities, so it was a fun time. When I decided to get married, I moved from Rochester to Buffalo, which was a big adjustment because my ex-husband was he lived in Buffalo, but we met in Rochester. And it was a big adjustment because I didn't know anyone in Buffalo besides when by me going to church. We went to Zion Dominion. One of the key turning points in my marriage was the night I got married. This was a big indicator because my ex-husband like flipped a switch that night we got married. And that was the indicator that I got myself into some shit. And from that night we got married, everything had changed. Because before we got married, everything was sweet. He was nice. He was super sweet to the kids. He was super sweet to my son. He was so sweet to the kids that when I broke up with him, because I went on a fast and said that God told me that I shouldn't be with him. When I broke up with him, my daughter went and cried to her father, and he called me upset. So that just lets you know how sweet he was. And then also too, my stomach was hurting so bad the night we got married that I ended up almost passing out in the bathroom by myself just off of having so much anxiety in my body. Now, whatever that means, I don't know, but I believe in the body telling you things. Now, for that year, from 2017 to 2018, just for me to sum it up, I knew that there was an issue, and I put us in like marriage counseling with the bishop, family, the marriage ministry, us getting counseling from our close friends, me going to my friends who I was in church with to actually say, hey, I have an issue. I'm really feeling a certain kind of way. I don't know. I'm feeling very, very empty inside. And when we would have counseling together, people would always, at the end of the counseling, say that this is just what marriage is. You're going through a hiccup. You are actually experiencing the growing pains of growing together. So I thought, especially in that first year of getting married, that I was the problem. And then on top of that, I was pregnant. So I ended up getting pregnant the night he proposed. And so I'm going through all these emotions. So I'm thinking literally it's me. And when I'm talking to people about it and they're talking to him about it, it makes sense that it's me and not him. It just, it really made sense. So I thought for the whole year that I was the problem, that I didn't know how to be a wife, that was just missing the club, and maybe I was just missing my friends, and I'm in another city. Now, in 2018, we decided to start a I decided to start selling hair. I read a book called The 4 Hour Work Week and followed that formula, and it led me into selling hair. At this time, I was working at Geico at the time, and I was doing like an evening shift. My ex-husband doing like a morning shift, so we were, we were parenting together in that aspect. When I used to go to work, my smallest daughter, my last daughter, would cry at the door for like 20 minutes straight, just at the door. My kids never wanted me to leave ever. And I didn't understand that they were feeling the same way that I was feeling. Now looking back at it, I see it. But I just thought like, wow, these kids really love their mother. Not knowing that they were being neglected emotionally and physically at the house. So they never wanted me to leave. A lot of times, even before starting, so even a couple of instances I remember saying to myself that I was in a bad situation where it was times he controlled the finances, and I was allowed to spend $100 a week on groceries for a family of 4. And it was because we didn't have any money. But one day I was cleaning and I found shoe boxes full of money. And when I tell you that these boxes was full of money, and when I found the money, I was appalled because we don't have any money. So where the fuck did the money come from? So I call him up and ask him, where did this money come from? And who gave us this money? And it turns out he was storing the money. He didn't tell me this. He actually told me that I needed to put it back and I better not take any, and I had no business going through his stuff. And I told my friends and I told the mothers at the church, and they told me that I need to take it. And they said he'll be fine. That was the advice that was given to me. However, I don't do good with lying, and I don't do good with stealing. Okay. Last time I stole, I ended up going to jail. Don't do that anymore. Okay. I was 17 and I don't want to steal from my husband because we were a teen. So that let me know how much of a situation that I was in by myself. So me and the kids were experiencing certain things, far as like having things hidden from us, him watching us find it, but he was actually hiding it, him abusing my son while I wasn't there, him and my daughter having a lot of altercations. And this, I tried to keep the peace in the house. And the best way for me to keep the peace in the house was kind of keep everybody separate. But once we started our business in 2018, everything kind of exaggerated. The abuse got worse. Now, for the kids, it was physical. For my son, it was physical abuse. For my daughter, it was mental abuse. For me, it was mental abuse. Another incident that I knew that I was like really in a fucked up situation is when my son had did something. So I bought my son a sweater, and my son did not want to wear the sweater. Mind you, it's winter time, and my son is very picky. He's a picky eater, and he's just picky about his clothes. He was upset that my son didn't want to wear the sweater. For me, I didn't care. He made my son go butt naked outside. And me and him are arguing regarding it, and he's telling me I need to stay out of it because I'm not a man. So my son is butt naked outside in the middle of fucking Buffalo winter. And now I'm getting upset and I'm getting irate. And so he lets him come in. So he was outside for like a minute, like a strong 60 seconds. That was one incident I knew that it was just bad. Another incident was when my son got in trouble. He did something and he put my son's hands on a table, a glass table, like an end table, and beat my son's hands, and the glass table broke. And my daughter, Heaven, looked at me and she was like, she looked at me like, you gonna let this go on? And I remember saying to her, like, listen, it's gonna be okay. We'll be okay. But in my head, I'm like, we're not okay. This man is gonna fuck us up. But I'm the one that put us in the situation. I'm the one that got us out from Rochester in Buffalo by ourselves in a situation like this. But I couldn't admit it to my daughter. I could not admit it to her because I fucked up. Like, I really fucked up by marrying this man and bringing us to Buffalo. But she knew I fucked up. My son knew I fucked up. We all knew I fucked up, but I couldn't admit it because I felt like it would bring more chaos to the house. So now I'm in fight or flight mode. How do I protect the kids? I have no money and I have no allies here. So how do I protect the kids? What do I do to protect my kids in this situation? So I became compliant. The more compliant I was, the less he fucked with the kids. When I wasn't compliant and I tried to stand my ground, he took it out on the kids. I learned that very quickly. And anybody that knows me knows I'm about my kids. So if you want to fuck with me, you really all you have to do is fuck with my kids. And that was how all the things that you're going to hear in this story, all the things that I allowed, you're going to say to yourself, well, how did she let that happen? How did she do this? How did she do that? And I want you to remember that as compliant as I was, it was to keep the peace so that way he was off of the kids. In the midst of keeping the peace, I did still seek out counseling. And the reason why it never worked was because everyone's seeing the representative. And everyone already felt like since they've known him for 10 years, 15 years, they've heard him here, they've heard him on the radio, they've seen him at this party, they've done this, they worked with him, he's such a sweet guy. No one thought it was as bad as it was. I would literally have people coming up to me, whispering in my ear, saying they wish they had a husband like mine. However, you could see my appearance drop. I stopped wearing makeup. I stopped doing my hair. My daughter, she started cutting her hair as well, like just cutting it. So you seen physically how I felt because I do wear how I feel on the inside and on the outside. But if you were to ask people about what kind of man he was, they would tell you he was a wonderful man. People would come up to me and say, "Oh my God, I could find a stepfather like you have," because in public, we really did look good. I'm not even gonna lie. We looked really good in public. That is one thing I can say. Publicly, we looked really good. Privately, it was a fucking mess. Well, first I started the hair company in 2018, and he did support me with starting this hair company. In the midst of me starting this hair company, I was working at the time. So I was doing both. And he also was very active with the kids, meaning like picking them up from extracurricular activities, us going out to dinner, us going to the movies, etc. But he dictated all of that. And long as I let him control everything, nobody was getting abused physically. And that was mainly my concern, was not Orion getting abused, not Heaven getting abused. Unfortunately, it still was happening, but it wasn't happening as much as it could have. When I started my hair company, Shape Bundles, and Only Raw Hair, it allowed me to be more out publicly by myself. Meaning, not saying like he held me captive, but I had no reason to go to places. Like any events that he was throwing, I didn't go because I wasn't going out anymore. So it was just always me and the kids. But when I started my business, I started like networking with people. I started getting out in the community more. So this allowed me to kind of bring other people into my circle, and they would see like how weird he would act sometimes and make little comments to me as well. So we brought a franchise called the Walk and Weave Buffalo to Walk and Weave in Atlanta. We brought it to Buffalo as a $50 sew-in salon. This came about because I started working with Maya Sly, who was my business coach. And my ex-husband invested into bringing this franchise salon to Buffalo. And he was very supportive with that. And he had to work with Maya. So up until this point, it was just me working with Maya. He had to start working with Maya. And Maya was the first person to tell me that I had a problem in my marriage. And I think that's because she didn't really know him and she was getting to know me. So she was on the outside looking in. And she told me, this man is controlling and he is jealous of you. Because in the midst of starting this company, I was doing so well, people stopped calling me his wife because I was always known as his wife. They started calling me Starr. Starr, you're doing a wonderful job. And it got to the point where my ex-husband said to me, he said, listen, when you talk, nobody understands what you're saying and you need to talk through me. And I'm like, why would you say that? I don't understand. And I already am a little bit insecure at times when it comes to like me public speaking, etc. And he knew that. So he told me, when you speak, you need to go through me. It's so that way I can articulate because no one understands you. And then he also was upset because I remember when somebody came up to him like, Starr, you're doing so well. You're doing so good. And when we went home, He said, you need to tell people it's because of your husband and not because of you. And I just remember saying to myself, like, but we a team. That's all I could think of is we a team. So when Maya told me that he was jealous, I was like, how can he be jealous and we're a team? How can the teammate be jealous? So she was the first person to actually tell me, like, you need to go and get help outside of your pastor and outside of your friends because they don't know what the fuck they talking about. Now, I did get help in counseling from an outside source. And I actually brought my kids in it as well. So I set us up for family counseling. In the midst of that family counseling, at the end of it, the counselor was telling us how, we were in the kids were in a loving situation. They were just going through something because my ex-husband was so wonderful. Because at the end of the day, we all really complaining about his ass in this counseling session and how, he's such a loving dad and he's such a loving father. So the kids felt like they didn't want to go anymore because it wasn't helpful. So then I ended up going to another counselor. Her name was Dorothy. I want to say her name was Dorothy. She had a session with me and my ex-husband. After the session, she called me and said that she wanted me to come in by myself. When I came in by myself, she told me that she felt like I was in danger and that she felt like my ex-husband was a covert narcissist. Didn't know what none of that meant. And when she told me that I was in danger, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm not in danger. Like, I know he off, but that man ain't crazy. You know what I mean? Like, all right, lady, you like dragging it a little bit, right? But she was dead serious. And I was like, okay, there's clearly a problem. There's clearly an issue. I don't know if it's as dramatic as she's saying it's an issue. However, I know it is bad. And when I tell you that lady was spot on, that lady was spot on. I didn't realize how spot on she was until later on down the line. However, when she told me that I was in danger, I was like, I gotta leave him. Because Maya pointed out what was going on, and now I had another person explain to me what was going on, I couldn't help but not notice what was really going on. Now my eyes are open because everyone before was telling me, Starr, you're fine. Starr, it's okay. Starr, this is just marriage. Starr, it's just you never been married before. But I'm seeing that these are issues. I see that he is lying about certain things. Like I'm catching him in lies. Before I wasn't catching him in lies because I wasn't looking for no lies. I'm not the type of woman to go through your phone, to go through your computer, to follow you, to do any of those things. So you can literally do whatever it is you want to do because I'm not gonna be checking for you because I'm thinking like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I was noticing these things that we now call red flags. That's the buzzword, red flags. So with knowing these red flags, I said to myself, I gotta leave. This is now I'm thinking I really am going to leave this man. I said, I don't know how I'm going to leave. I don't know when I'm going to leave, but I have to leave. So in my head, I'm like, okay, now I have to start planning my exit strategy. And we all know a woman leaves mentally first before she leaves physically. So in my head, I thought I had like a year or two to leave. Little did I know I had only a couple of months. The last straw where determined and pushed me to get out sooner than later was me and my brother had reconnected. So me and my brother were always really, really, really close. We're a week apart. And we have the same dad but different mothers. We were really close before I got married. Really, no one really cared for me getting married to my ex-husband. No one really liked it. And once I didn't get married, it kind of like distanced me from everyone else. My brother and me reconnected. Like, that's my twin. You know what I mean? And he ended up talking and having a conversation with my husband. And he's just that type of dude, right? He gets along with anybody. So him and my ex-husband ended up having a conversation about something. It was probably about God or something like that. And then one conversation led into another conversation, which led into another conversation. My brother calls me up and he said, listen, your husband's off. And you need to really evaluate your situation. And I'm like, fuck. Like, I know he's off, but the fact is you only had a couple conversations and you already done picked it up, which I'm not surprised because you like my twin. But the fact that you bringing it to my attention, and what really triggered me was he said, you have a choice in this matter and you feel like this, because I opened up to my brother. He said, you have a choice in this matter and you feel like this. He said, imagine how your kids feel and they don't have a choice because you put them in it. When he said that, it was like a light bulb went on my head. Like, wake the fuck up. Because I'm in survival mode. I'm dealing with the business. My kids never wanted me to leave the house. They always wanted me to stay home. They're still going through it. But I'm not going through it as much because I'm really out the house. So when he told me that, I ended up, my ex-husband and my daughter, my oldest daughter, ended up getting into a fist fight when I wasn't there. And it was a couple days before her birthday. I was supposed to be taking her to Canada. They ended up in a fist fight. Now, she was like 15 at the time. And I'm on the phone with him, and I hear him antagonizing her, and I just hear her screaming. And my oldest daughter, she's not a punk, right? And I can hear her frustration at this point while I'm on the phone. So they in an altercation, and after the altercation ends, he's like, I know you're not taking her anywhere. Her birthday is canceled, etc. But I'm like, I'm going to take her out the house still because I want to know really how she feels. So after that altercation with them, I still took her to her birthday celebration, which was just me and her, to Toronto or Canada. When I took her to Canada and Niagara Falls, after we had our fun and we were about to go home, I asked her, I said, tell me how you really feel. And I'll never forget it. She looked at me and she said, we are miserable. And when she told me that they were miserable, she just started running down the whole list of why she was miserable. And she ended it with saying her and her brother talked about it. They never wanted to tell me because they wanted me to be happy. So I never had a conversation with them. They never had a conversation with me. And it was crazy how we could have a group of people in the house, but not really communicating because you have one person dividing. I didn't even know that was possible. So as she's telling me how she's feeling, she was like, talk to Orion. Orion is about 5 years old at this time, or 6 years old. She's like, no, he's not. He's like 8 or 9, honestly. She's like, talk to Orion. So I go home and I talk to Orion. Orion had got in trouble because I bought him a phone. So he was in trouble because I bought him a phone. Because you couldn't take it out on me because I'm grown. I can buy wherever I want, what I want. So you took it out on him. So he was in trouble for having the phone. Literally, he was in trouble because his mother bought him a phone. Orion was watching TV, and I said, Orion, I want to know how you feel about everything. And he just looked at me and started bawling, crying. He says, I don't know what I keep doing wrong for him to hate me. And when he said that, I just started crying because Orion is not that kind of kid to just say something like that. He keeps everything internal. And I'm like, what do you mean? He started telling me how he goes in his room, hides in the closet, and takes a flashlight and reads with a bat just in case if my ex-husband comes. And when he starts telling me like all of these things that he's experiencing and how he's handling the turmoil and how my ex-husband is waking him up and beating him because he had wet the bed. I took out my laptop and I Googled luxury apartments. And I found the first apartment that I seen was in Williamsville. And I said, okay, Orion, I'm going to go. I'll be back. I told my ex-husband, he was outside somewhere. I was like, I'll be back. I'm going to go to the store. That day, I went to the apartment complex and signed a lease. I didn't even look at the apartment because I knew I had to leave. I have my oldest daughter telling me, I have my youngest son telling me, I'm miserable. Everybody's miserable. And I felt like it's because of me. Because I signed the lease, I sat my ex-husband down and I explained to him, listen, hey, I want a divorce. When I told him I wanted a divorce, he told me that it was just pretty much all in my head and that we would work through it. Because remember, at this point, I had been doing counseling for the last 4 years of our marriage, right? So this to him is just another episode of me saying, hey, I'm not happy. So he believed it, but he didn't believe it. And I think the way I was acting, how I was being so nonchalant about things, he started believing it because things started popping up. So one of the things that popped up was I got a letter saying that I had surrendered my kids' life insurance policy. So all three of the kids had life insurance policy: Heaven, Orion, and Nuradina. Orion and Heaven is not his child. Nuradina is his. That's the only one I have with him. He forged, turns out he forged my signature and collected the money for the life insurance policies. I didn't know. So that was one incident. Another incident was he actually filed my taxes because we had a family friend who was our accountant. He went to him and told him that he was going to file our taxes jointly because we normally did that, but not this year because I'm divorcing him. And we had that conversation. He was going to He went to the family accountant and explained to him that we were filing our taxes jointly. So the accountant let him file the taxes jointly. He put my income at zero when I actually made over $170,000. So that was a incident. Those little things, well, they're not little, right? But these are the type of things that was happening once he realized that I wanted a divorce. So in the midst of this, I ended up going on an Essence Festival trip with some friends. And during this trip was our wedding anniversary. And in the midst of our wedding anniversary, I see on social media like, oh my God, I have the best wife. I love her so much. Oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. Oh my gosh, she's great. And in my head, I'm like, yo, this is how my life has been all of these 4 or 5 years. Publicly, it looks one way, but privately, I just told the man I wanted a divorce. So I don't even know why this is happening on social media. But for the women who can relate to what I'm saying, you know that publicly everything looks one way. And I was watching this in real time. So when I came back from the Essence Festival, I like to work at night. I'm a night owl. So I was working and he was trying to talk to me and tell me how he loved me and he was following me. He was telling me how he didn't want to get a divorce, and I was telling him how I did wanted to get a divorce and how I really didn't love him anymore and I just wanted out. He could have everything. And it was to the point where I was trying to go to the bathroom. He's in the bathroom with me. I'm going to the room. He's following me. I'm crying, telling him to leave me alone. He's like, no, you need to be loved because you never known how to be loved because your parents weren't there for you. So now I'm laying on the sofa. He's up in my face trying to kiss me and etc. And I poke him in his face. And when I poke him in his face, because now we're both on the sofa, he gets on top of me and starts strangling me. And he has really long locks like to his butt. And he grabs his locks, my neck, and I think his locks was really saved my neck because it was like a cushion, and just starts strangling me and telling me like, didn't I tell you and didn't I tell you? And then all of a sudden he just stopped. He got off of me, went in the room and laid down. And I remember being there in disbelief. Like, I can't believe this really just happened. And I had to think to myself, dude, my first instinct is to go get a knife. Because the last man that put their hands on me, I ended up in jail and almost in prison because I stabbed him and he just pushed me. I got a man that just put his hands around my neck. I want to hurt him. But then I have to say to myself, Starr, you have kids upstairs sleep. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning at this point. So do I do something to hurt him? And then I'm in jail because now they have to prove who did what. He's going to be wounded. And now I got the kids alone with him after I done did this. So imagine what he going to really do to them. So I just cried myself to sleep. The next day, I don't really say much. He gets ready for work. I'm in the kitchen washing dishes. He kisses me and says, all right, babe, I love you. I see you after work. Kisses me on my cheek. And I look at him and I say, why did you do that to me last night? He said, what are you talking about? I said, why did you strangle me last night? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. So we go back and forth. And he's like, when he realized he can't convince me that he did not do it, he looks at me. It was like he stopped. and just was like, all right. He said, you think anybody gonna believe you? He said, do I come across as somebody that will do that? He said, you think anybody gonna believe you? I don't say anything. I'm just listening. He said, nobody knows me, Starr. He said, my mother don't know me. My sister don't know me. My friends don't know me. You don't know me. And at my head at that moment, I said to myself, he's going to kill me. So I ended up telling two people after he left. I called my sister-in-law, and she called her mother in three-way, which is his mother. And they told me that I was in danger, and they told me that he would kill me. And they were the first people to like really like believe when I didn't have to convince them because they knew who he was. Once he left and I sat and talked with my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, I know that that 4 month or 5 month plan for me to leave was about to turn into a couple of goddamn days because there was no way I was gonna be able to stay in that house. So in the midst of the night he strangled me up into like say within 7 days, right? Because I didn't leave like right the next day. I thought it was gonna be a little easier for me to leave, which I don't even know why. Thinking back, I don't even know why the hell I thought that. But I remember trying to like go see my grandmother and him standing in front of the door and telling me that I wasn't allowed to leave. And if I did leave, I wasn't taking the kids. And he would go to jail to make sure I wasn't taking those kids. And so I knew it was gonna be a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. So what I did was I waited for him. I kind of pacified him. I slept with him. And then I kind of eased him by sleeping with him. And then the next day when he went to work, I told my kids, I told my oldest daughter, I said, listen, when he leaves to work, we are leaving. I already have some bags packed. We are leaving. And as soon as he turned the corner, we got to go, and we got to go quick. So as soon as he kissed me goodbye, I seen him turn the corner, and I was like yelling in the house, okay, we have to leave. We have to leave now. The shit was like a movie. I was like, we got to go. We got to go, because I didn't know if he forgot something. When the movie, you always see them forgetting something and coming back. That's all I thought. I was like, he's going to forget something, and he's going to come back, and he's going to catch me trying to leave. So I was like, we got to go. We got to go. So me and the kids booked into the goddamn car, and I went to the police station. I filed a report that he strangled me. And then I went to Rochester and stayed with my grandmother. In the midst of me actually leaving and picking up and taking the kids, in retaliation, my ex-husband tried to take all three of the kids from me, saying that I kidnapped them all. But he was actually only able to get my youngest daughter. And the court ended up giving him residential custody because they didn't know really what happened. And she lived in the home, so they gave him residential custody because he stayed in the house. So he used CPS as a tool and Family Justice Center as a tool to try to get me back into the home. One of the biggest things I learned very quickly during this divorce was how the system can actually be used against you. And I don't know if this is a thing, but I call it paperwork abuse, okay? Because he was actually able to use the CPS against me, where I had true concerns, where one day he laid my daughter down after giving her a bath, had her spread her legs open on the bed, and wiped her vagina. And the reason why I know this, because she told me how uncomfortable it made her. When I explained this to CPS, and after they investigated, they told me that he was such a nice man and it was part of his culture. Don't know what culture that is. So another thing that I found was judges, they don't know the whole story. So we were going from judge to judge, and they were hearing different stories, and we were getting different outcomes. So one judge don't know that I had a restraining order. The other judge don't know that he strangled me. The other judge doesn't know that he lied to CPS. The other judge doesn't know that he lied to this judge, and now he's saying something completely different. So what I found to be extremely helpful was going to see my daughter when she was at school, because I couldn't go to the house to see her. So I would just go to her school during her lunch break to see her. And in the midst of that, the school monitor taught me about the Family Justice Center. And this is how I ended up getting help from the Family Justice Center. By getting help from the Family Justice Center, and they were seeing all the lies that was happening inside the courtroom, they actually put me on a high-risk team. The high-risk team consisted of like a detective, a judge, attorneys, and because they thought I was at risk of being killed, because their advice to me was to actually leave the state, but I didn't want to leave the state because my kids had already been through so much. They put me on this team. And by me being on this team, I was actually put into a different courtroom. This courtroom allowed me to see one judge for everything versus going to see different judges. And this was a real big turning point in my divorce, because at this point, I was losing because he was so good at it. His first job, besides his entertainment company in Buffalo, was dealing with paperwork. He dealt with paperwork all day for people in the system. So he knew how to navigate it. By me working more closely with the Family Justice Center, it was one of the first time I actually felt like I was heard, because at this point I was telling people what was going on and it was looking at me like I was a fish out of water. But when I sat, and I remember the lady name, her name was Jessica. I don't know if she works there or not, but love her. They literally was telling me like, yeah, this is what normally happens. What you're experiencing is normal when you're dealing with a covert narcissist. I never even heard that word, that what I was experiencing was normal. So the Family Justice Center was the first time I felt like I was seen. It was the first time I felt like I was heard. And it was the first time I felt like I was safe and protected. And that gave me a lot of strength and power. On top of it, I ended up getting a new attorney where the Family Justice Center recommended Elena Monti. Elena Monti, when I tell you, is a pit bull in a skirt, okay? She sat there and she told me, because when I first when I first gave my ex-husband the paperwork for the divorce, it was 2 pages long. And then I gave him the house, I gave him the cars, I gave him the bank accounts. The only thing I wanted was the kids. And Elena looked at me and she said, fuck that. He's going to give you something because he's a piece of shit. And I was like, okay, all right. I just wanted it to be over. But Elena helped me to get full custody of my daughter, and she helped me walk through that divorce. So one of the turning points in the divorce, now mind you, the divorce is going on now, we like 1.5 years, 2 years, okay? We just trying to get him to sign the paperwork. So we're just going back and forth, trying to give him whatever he wants to sign the paperwork. He really just wanted me home. So the turning point was my daughter was actually having nasal problems to the point where when she was asleep, foam was coming out of her mouth, like full foam was coming out of her mouth because she was not having enough oxygen. So as I couldn't just get her the surgery because I would need his permission, and he was saying no, she wasn't allowed to have the surgery. So I had to go through the court. The judge found that she needed the surgery. He ordered the surgery to happen. The couple of days before the surgery was supposed to happen, my ex-husband went to the doctor and said that she wasn't allowed to have the surgery after we went to court. This was the one time that no one could deny what I've been saying the whole time. And because he did that, the judge seen it for himself, and it was like the case was over. I got full custody of our daughter. That was it. I got full custody because he was neglectful. He proved how neglectful he was. And that was the first time I had like a glimpse of hope that there was light at the end of the tunnel. Because when you're going through a divorce, you're kind of at a standstill. And especially such a dramatic and traumatizing divorce, I was stuck. It was the first time I was unstuck. And so with me having full custody of my daughter and him only having visitation, my other 2 children happy that, they're out of the house. They started thriving, which was wonderful to see. I actually started planning how my life was actually going to look. So this was the beginning, the end and the beginning. The one thing I can say is that journey was extremely long. Even though it was 5-6 years, it felt like 12. Dealing with the manipulation, dealing with the paperwork abuse, dealing with the police not believing me, because after they believed me at first, but then when they met him, they said that he was such a nice man. Dealing with the friends, our mutual friends not believing me because they felt like they knew him for so long. Dealing with the isolation, dealing with my kids and their trauma, and then, trying, them not wanting to make friends and committing suicide and all type of things. Like, that was a lot for us to handle within that 6 years. But it's over. Even though that part is over, I can honestly say, and I might get a lot of slack for this, but I can honestly say that I feel like we were supposed to go through that for whatever reason. How I'm sitting in front of this camera. Because a lot of times when you're going through that, you feel alone and you feel like no one hears you. But I will tell you, as smart as I am, as resilient as I am, as street smart as I am, as a good person I am, I went through it. So because I went through it, I know anybody can go through it. And a lot of times you do experience abuse and you experience manipulation, but because it's so normal in incidences, you kind of rush it off and think, hey, this is just how things are going. The main reason why I wanted to share this story, even though it is embarrassing to share because there will be a lot of backlash and judgment for it, is because I know that there's so many people that experience what I'm experiencing and they don't know where they can go and they feel like they are alone. And you feel like you don't know how you even got yourself into this situation. But it's not hard to get yourself in situations like that. Women take men back after they cheated on them. I've never had a man cheat on me and I took him back. I've never had a man curse at me. Women experience that. So it's easy to judge each other for things, but we really should support each other and have empathy for each other and not tear each other down. And I wanted to share this story to let you know that you're not alone. If you do know someone that is experiencing some of the things that you've heard me talk about, or you feel like they're experiencing things that they shouldn't be experiencing, or if it's you and you don't even know where to go to, there are resources that you can tap into. The Family Justice Center, the Mona House. Elena Monti is a great lawyer. We'll also put some resources at the end of this video for you. But you are not alone. You don't have to go through it alone. Going through it alone is going to be the hardest thing that you'll do. So you want to start reaching out for support and for the right help. I want to thank everybody for listening to the story, but I also want to let you guys know that even though all that bullshit I went through, me and the kids, we are thriving and surviving today, okay? I have done a lot of therapy with the kids. We have grown emotionally. We have done a lot of personal development together as a family. We're at a good space mentally, spiritually, physically. And I will say that this is the best and the happiest we've all been in our lives. Heaven is studying to be a master sommelier. Orion leaves the college in September to be a private chef. Nuradina is starting her business. I am living my best life right now at 40 years old. So I want you guys to follow this journey with me and celebrate, because we heard all the bullshit, right? However, you got to go through the bullshit to get to where you want to be. And that's what I truly feel. So I want you to follow. And I love all you guys for your support.